When we moved back to Canada, there were a few albums. Michael Jackson's Thriller was a big album in the house.
Great album.
It's just also it's a mishmash of good stuff and bad stuff. There's some Sade and some Bee Gees, which I was like, and for some reason there was the Roxette album that came out in the early '90s.
Great album, yeah,
right. And so I got that one. I just remember like that was my first memory of like playing the hit and just the sound of the guitars on that album and just getting a ruler and wanting to like feel like just have that power of what that sounded like and to be going, oh, I'd love to make this sound. And at the time I had, I was in the Big Brothers, Big Sisters organization. I had a big brother who actually was living in our basement sublet at the time, and he had an acoustic guitar.
Where were you at this point?
This is in Edmonton.
Okay, all right.
So, and I just remember going down just wanting to take the guitar and just hold it and have this thing all the time. I didn't know how to play. I just put it on my lap and like stop the frets at different places and just played it on my lap. And I was just like, that was hooked from that moment. I was like, this is what I want to do. Yeah.
Did you associate it with like what your parents did?
No, not at all. No.
So it was just this new sort of thing.
Yeah, it was just like I just found something that I really like. It just resonated with me for some reason.
How long did it take you before you were like till you had your own, till you started playing that kind of thing?
Well, that first moment on the guitar playing, that was like, I want one of these things and I want to learn how to play it. So I started taking lessons, and it really was it was a lot of frustration in the beginning because I didn't want to play an acoustic guitar.
Okay.
I wanted that electric guitar sound.
Really?
It was such a long. I didn't understand anything about what made the electric guitar sound like it did. So it was just like one progression to the next and just one disappointment after another. The acoustic wasn't. Remember, like I wanted it to sound like that sound I wanted. So I took like tracing paper and round it through the strings because it would make that buzzy kind of like impressive sound. Yeah. It's like sort of, not quite. Then I got an electric guitar and an amp, but it didn't have distortion. So I'm like, no, this isn't it either. And then finally I got a little tiny microscopic PV amp.
Right.
And that had distortion, but it didn't sound like the albums did, right? So it was like this constant progression towards understanding, getting a bigger, fuller picture of like what it really is to like be fully committed to like this act, not of just being a musician, because I really consider myself more of a producer, composer, creator of music than a pure performer. Like I've never really been interested in like I am a performer of this instrument and I am my focus to be the most excellent. Like it was for a while, but what I really realized I loved was creating the sound that was in my head and getting that on tape or getting it into the computer.
It's interesting because you sort of touch on I don't know, maybe because I was about to sort of, because you had mentioned metal before.
Yeah.
And I was about to sort of have you compare metal and classical, because to me metal is very much like just, it's taking rock music to the most sort of like technical ends. Now, I'm not a metal guy at all. I've come to really, really respect what metal is and what they do in it. It's not something I sit and listen to myself, especially when you get into the Cookie Monster stuff, but that's a whole other thing. But that being said, like the most phenomenal guitar players I've seen, or that's the stuff that they're playing. You know what I mean? It's really complex, but like, I almost wonder, because I think you might have answered what I was going to ask, in that you weren't interested in the performance side of it, right?
Well, let's put it this way. I was interested in performing. I like being on stage. I've done acting, and I loved being on stage from an early age as well. But I wasn't interested in, like, when I say performing, I mean like what the quartet does. Like they've gone to school, they've got their master's degree, they're going to PhD level in performance. Their thing is, this is my focus and the thing that I'm going to work my craft until I have mastery over this. And I mean, it's partly laziness and partly just like that wasn't the main thing for me.
Gotcha.
So I did love performing. I hated all the hurry up and wait and the annoyance of dealing with sound and having to deal with clubs and all of the rest of that stuff. But I loved the moment of being on stage. Was great.
Yeah.
And then everything else was sort of like, yeah, I can give it a take, but put me in the studio, and then I'm like, this is home.
Don't forget, you can subscribe to our full audio episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere you find your audio podcasts. The full episodes, highlights, and our live off-the-floor performance videos can be found at our YouTube channel, and you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram at the AVB Podcast. Of course, you'll find links to our incredible sponsors and this week's guest in the description below. The AVB Podcast is part of the Border City Network. Find more great content at bordercitynetwork.com. See you next time, folks. Bye-bye.